The day my body stopped working, the world decided my dreams should stop too, but nobody told my soul I lost my body, not my dreams. And before you judge those words, before you decide they are too heavy or too dramatic, let me tell you something honest from the deepest place of my soul. Losing your body does not happen only in accidents. People lose their bodies in hospitals, in wheelchairs, in pain. But people also lose their bodies in fear, in shame, in silence, in trauma, in expectations forced on them by the world. I lost my body in a way everyone could see, but long before that day, many parts of me were already being taken away quietly. There was a time when I believed my worth was tied to how strong I looked, how perfect I appeared, how useful I was to others. I believed love had conditions. I believed dreams belonged only to those who walked fast, ran freely, stood tall without support. Nobody told me that dreams are born in the soul, not in the spine, not in the legs, not in the body. Nobody told me that until life decided to teach me in the hardest language possible. The day everything changed, the world did not pause. Cars kept moving. People kept laughing. The sun still rose as if nothing had happened. But inside me, an entire universe collapsed. Pain entered my life not as a visitor, but as a permanent resident. Doctors spoke in careful voices. People looked at me with pity before they even knew my name. And in that moment, I was not afraid of paralysis. I was afraid of becoming invisible. I was afraid that my dreams would be buried under sympathy, under labels, under the word cannot. When you lose control of your body, the first thing you lose is dignity. Strangers touch you without asking. Decisions are made for you. Your privacy becomes a luxury. Your independence becomes a memory. And slowly, silently, the world starts lowering its expectations of you. They talk slower. They aim smaller for you. They say things like, "At least you're alive," as if life without purpose is some kind of reward. But let me tell you something powerful. Surviving is not enough for a soul that was born to live. I cried on nights where the pain screamed louder than my faith. I cried not because I was weak, but because I was human. I mourned the version of myself I would never meet again, and that grief was necessary. Because you cannot rise if you don't allow yourself to feel the fall. Strength is not pretending everything is fine. Strength is sitting with your brokenness and saying, "You will not define the end of my story." There came a moment very quietly when something shifted inside me. Not a miracle, not sudden healing, just a question that refused to leave me alone. If my body no longer listens to me, will I stop listening to my dreams? If my legs cannot carry me, will my voice also remain silent? If life has taken so much, will I give it my hope too? That was the day I realized my body may be injured, but my soul is undefeated. Dreams don't need legs. Dreams need courage. Dreams need fire. Dreams need someone stubborn enough to say, "I will find another way," and so I did. When I could not walk toward my dreams, I dragged myself toward them with belief. When doors were not built for wheelchairs, I knocked with my words. When stages were not accessible, I created my own space with truth. People often ask me, "Where do you get this strength from?" And I smile, because strength was never something I owned. Strength was something I was forced to discover. Pain introduced me to parts of myself I would have never met otherwise. It stripped away the fake, the shallow, the unnecessary. It left me with purpose. You see, when the world breaks you physically, it gives you a dangerous gift, clarity. You start seeing who stays, who leaves, who loves conditionally, and who loves deeply. You learn that approval is fragile, but self-respect is unshakable. You learn that beauty fades, bodies fail, but impact lasts longer than bones. I stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What now?" That question changed everything. What now means responsibility. What now means ownership. What now means that even if the map is gone, the destination still matters. I accepted that my life would not look like I planned, but that did not mean it could not be meaningful. There were days I felt small, days when the wheelchair felt heavier than my body, days when I wanted to disappear rather than explain myself again. But every single time I reminded myself I am not here to be comfortable. I am here to be courageous. Comfort is temporary. Courage creates legacy. I chose to speak even when my voice trembled. I chose to show up even when the world stared. I chose to dream bigger than my limitations, louder than my fear, stronger than my pain. And something incredible happened. The same body people saw as broken became the reason they listened. The same scars I once tried to hide became proof that survival is possible. The same pain that tried to silence me turned into a message that traveled further than my legs ever could. If you are listening to me today and you feel trapped in a body, a life, a situation you did not choose, hear me clearly. Losing control does not mean losing value. Being limited does not mean being finished. Falling apart does not mean failing. Sometimes it means you are being rebuilt for something greater than you imagined. Your dreams are not cancelled because your circumstances changed. They are only asking you to rise differently. I lost my body, yes. I lost ease, comfort, speed, and certainty, but I did not lose my dreams, because dreams live where pain cannot reach unless you invite it in. Dreams live in the choice you make every morning to try again. Dreams live in the refusal to shrink just because the world feels uncomfortable with your strength. And this is only the beginning of my story. I remember the moment I truly understood that my life would never return to what it was before. It wasn't the accident, it wasn't the diagnosis, it wasn't even the wheelchair. It was the way people started introducing me before I spoke for myself. She's disabled, she's paralyzed, she can't. And every sentence ended there as if my story had already reached its conclusion. As if the world had decided that this was the most interesting thing about me. That was when I realized something painful but important. Society loves labels more than truth. Labels are easy. Truth requires effort. And I refuse to live as a label. There is a quiet violence in being underestimated. Not loud enough to be noticed, but sharp enough to cut your confidence every single day. People expect less from you, and slowly they teach you to expect less from yourself. That is how dreams die, not from failure, but from permission. Permission to quit, permission to shrink, permission to accept a smaller life because others are more comfortable that way, but my soul was never meant to live small. I began to understand that my biggest enemy was not my broken body, but the broken beliefs I was starting to carry. Beliefs that said, you are a burden. Beliefs that said, you should be grateful for whatever little you get. Beliefs that whispered, who will listen to you now? So I fought those beliefs before I fought the world. Every morning became a negotiation between pain and purpose. My body would scream, rest, and my fear would whisper, hide, but my dreams would say, stand up, your way. And I learned that standing up does not always mean using your legs. Sometimes it means using your voice. Sometimes it means showing up even when you are tired of being strong. Sometimes it means daring to want more when life has already taken so much. I stopped waiting to be rescued. I stopped waiting for motivation to magically appear. I stopped waiting for the world to become fair. I understood that no one was coming to hand me courage. I had to create it myself in the smallest decisions, to speak even when my hands shook, to hope even when the future felt blank, to believe even when logic told me not to. There were moments I failed. Many moments, days when I doubted everything I had ever believed about myself, days when I wondered if dreaming was just another form of denial, but then I remembered something vital: dreams are not promises. Dreams are directions. They don't guarantee an easy journey. They only tell you where your heart wants to go, and my heart refused to stop moving. I learned to redefine strength. Strength was no longer about lifting weight or walking without support. Strength became about vulnerability, about saying, this hurts, without apologizing, about asking for help without feeling ashamed, about allowing myself to be seen as I was, not as people expected me to be. Pain humbled me, but it did not erase me. The world teaches us that value comes from productivity, speed, perfection. Disability teaches you something radical. Value comes from existence, from presence, from impact, from how deeply you touch lives, not how quickly you move through them. I started speaking not because I had all the answers, but because I had lived the questions. I spoke about fear because I knew it intimately. I spoke about resilience because I had to practice it daily, and slowly, people stopped seeing the wheelchair first. They started hearing the truth behind my words. They started recognizing themselves in my struggle. That is when I understood my purpose was bigger than my pain. You see, when life strips you down to your core, it reveals what really matters. Approval fades, applause becomes irrelevant, what remains is meaning. And meaning is what carries you when motivation disappears. I made a decision that changed everything. I would not wait to feel confident before living boldly. Confidence would have to catch up with my courage. I would not wait to be healed before being useful. I would not wait to be perfect before being powerful, because waiting is another form of surrender, and I did not survive to surrender. I learned to love myself in a body the world taught me to pity. I learned to respect my scars as chapters, not conclusions. I learned that dignity is not given by society, it is claimed from within. Every time I chose to believe in my dreams despite the evidence against me, I reclaimed a piece of my power. And the most surprising thing happened. My limitations stopped being my weakness and started becoming my language. Through them, I spoke to people who felt unseen. Through them, I reached hearts that success alone could never touch. Through them, I became proof that life does not end where movement stops. If you think your dreams are too big for your situation, let me tell you this: dreams grow best in resistance. Pressure does not destroy diamonds, it creates them. And if you are under pressure right now, it may be because something valuable is forming inside you. I lost my body, but I found my voice. I lost my comfort, but I found my courage. I lost my old life, but I discovered a deeper one. And I was just getting started. There is a loneliness that comes with pain that no crowd can fix. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like you are fighting a private war inside your chest. I lived in that loneliness for a long time. Not because no one was around me, but because no one could truly understand what it felt like to wake up in a body that no longer obeyed you, to plan every simple task like a battle strategy, to measure your dreams against a reality that constantly reminded you of loss. And in that loneliness, I learned something sacred. Solitude can either bury you or build you. It all depends on what you tell yourself when no one is listening. At first, my inner voice was cruel. It repeated the world's doubts in my own tone. It reminded me of everything I could no longer do. It replayed memories like punishments, and I did not realize how dangerous that voice was, because it sounded like truth, but it was not truth. It was fear wearing a familiar face. So I had to retrain my mind, not with positivity that lies, but with honesty that heals. I began to speak to myself the way I would speak to someone I loved. I stopped asking myself to be strong all the time. I allowed rest without guilt. I allowed sadness without shame, and slowly the war inside me became quieter. Healing did not arrive as a grand moment. It arrived as permission to feel, to fall apart, to rebuild again. People often think resilience is loud. They think it looks like constant smiling, endless motivation, dramatic victories. But real resilience is quiet. It is waking up on a day you don't want to face and choosing to stay. It is breathing through pain without knowing how long it will last. It is trusting yourself when nothing else feels stable. I stopped competing with my past. That was one of the hardest lessons. The old me was gone, and chasing her was hurting the present me. Comparison is a cruel thief. It steals gratitude, joy, and self-respect. I learned to honor who I was becoming instead of mourning who I had been, and who I was becoming was someone deeper. Pain taught me empathy. It taught me patience. It taught me how fragile life is, and how strong the human spirit can be at the same time. It softened me in ways success never could. It stripped away arrogance and replaced it with understanding. I no longer judged people by what they achieved, but by how they survived. There were moments when hope felt irresponsible, moments when dreaming felt like setting myself up for disappointment. But then I realized something profound. Hopelessness had never protected anyone. It had never made pain easier. It had never made life safer. Hope, even when it hurts, is still a form of resistance. So I resisted. I resisted the urge to give my story a tragic ending. I resisted the voices that said my best days were behind me. I resisted the pressure to inspire by pretending I was never broken. I chose to inspire by telling the truth, that I was scared, that I was tired, that I doubted myself, and that I kept going anyway. That honesty became my strength. I understood that my dreams would not look the same anymore, and that was not a failure. That was evolution. Dreams are allowed to change shape. Purpose is allowed to take a new path. What matters is not the form of your dream, but the fire behind it. Some days my fire was a flame. Some days it was only an ember. But even an ember is enough to start a fire if you protect it. I protected mine fiercely. I stopped explaining my pain to people who wanted entertainment instead of understanding. I stopped proving my worth to those who had already decided my limits. I invested my energy where it mattered, in growth, in truth, in service. And slowly, the same world that once looked at me with pity began to look at me with respect. Not because my body changed, but because my presence did. When you stop apologizing for existing, people feel it. When you carry yourself with dignity, the world adjusts. I realized that I was not meant to go back to my old life. I was meant to create a new one built on depth, not speed, one built on impact, not appearance, one built on courage, not convenience. If you are grieving the life you thought you would have, know this: grief is not the opposite of gratitude. You can mourn what you lost and still honor what remains. You can miss who you were and still love who you are becoming. Healing does not demand denial, it demands acceptance. I lost my body, but I did not lose my humanity. I lost ease, but I gained awareness. I lost movement, but I gained meaning, and my dreams were still alive. There came a point when I stopped asking life to be gentle with me. I realized that gentleness was never promised, and fairness was never guaranteed. What was always available, though, was choice. The choice to respond instead of react. The choice to rise instead of retreat. The choice to decide that my story would not be written by my worst day. I began to understand that pain changes your relationship with time. The future becomes uncertain, the past becomes heavy, and the present becomes the only place where power exists. So I learned to live there, one breath at a time, one decision at a time, one small victory that no one applauded but that mattered deeply to me. There were days when success looked very different from what the world celebrates. Success was getting out of bed. Success was smiling without forcing it. Success was choosing kindness when bitterness would have been easier. And in honoring these quiet victories, I rebuilt my confidence piece by piece. I stopped waiting for permission to matter. I noticed how quickly people are inspired by outcomes but uncomfortable with process. They love the finished story, the healed version, the triumphant ending. They don't always want to sit with the uncertainty, the mess, the in-between. But that is where real transformation happens, in the unseen hours. In the private battles, in the moments when you choose yourself even when no one is watching, I learned to trust my pace. Healing does not follow deadlines, growth does not obey timelines, and comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20 is another form of self-betrayal. I gave myself grace, not as an excuse to quit, but as fuel to continue. One of the most powerful things I did was forgive myself. Forgive myself for the anger I felt. Forgive myself for the days I wanted to disappear. Forgive myself for believing I was less than before. That forgiveness freed energy I had been wasting on self-blame and turned it into self-belief, and belief is dangerous in the best way. Belief gave me the courage to dream publicly again. To say what I wanted out loud, to claim space without apology, to believe that my existence was not a burden but a contribution. Every time I spoke my truth, I reclaimed ground that fear had taken from me. I also learned that inspiration is not about being perfect. It is about being real. People did not connect to me because I had overcome everything. They connected because I was still overcoming, because I stood in front of them unfinished, honest, and hopeful anyway. That is when I stopped trying to be fearless and started being faithful to my values, to my purpose, to the quiet voice inside me that always knew I was meant for more than survival. I began to see my life as a message. Not a performance, not a tragedy, not a miracle story designed to make others feel better about their comfort, but a message that said, you are allowed to exist fully, even when you are broken. You are allowed to want more, even when life has taken much. You are allowed to dream, even when your path looks nothing like you imagined. The body I lost taught me discipline. The pain I carry taught me compassion. The struggle I live with taught me truth. And truth is the most powerful thing a human being can offer the world. I no longer measured my life by what I could do physically. I measured it by the courage I brought into rooms, the hope I left behind in hearts, the honesty I lived with when no one was clapping. I was not here to impress. I was here to impact, and as long as my heart beats with purpose, as long as my voice carries truth, as long as my dreams wake up with me every morning, I know this with certainty. I lost my body, but my dreams never left me. They were waiting for me to believe again. I want you to understand something deeply, something that took me years to accept. Life does not owe us an explanation. It does not sit us down and justify its decisions. It does not apologize for the pain it causes. Waiting for answers can keep you trapped in bitterness. Creating meaning is what sets you free. Once I stopped demanding answers, I started building purpose. I realized that every human being is carrying something invisible. Some carry grief, some carry regret, some carry guilt, some carry bodies that no longer cooperate. Pain is not a competition, and strength is not measured by how little you suffer, but by how honestly you live with what you've been given. There was a time when I tried to be strong enough for everyone else. I hid my exhaustion, I minimized my struggle, I smiled through days that felt unbearable, but strength that denies pain eventually breaks. True strength integrates it. It says, this is hard, and I am still here. That shift changed my relationship with myself. I stopped proving, I started living, I stopped performing courage, I started practicing it. I allowed my life to be imperfect, my energy to be limited, my progress to be uneven, and in that acceptance I found freedom. People often think that losing your body means losing your femininity, your desirability, your identity. But identity is not built on movement. It is built on values, on how you love, how you speak, how you choose integrity even when no one is watching. I did not lose who I was. I shed who I was pretending to be, and that shedding was painful, but it was also necessary. I began to understand that dreams are not just about personal success. They are about service, about using what you have lived through to light the path for someone else. Pain that is healed becomes wisdom. Pain that is shared becomes hope. That is when my dreams grew larger than me. I no longer dreamed only of what I wanted to become. I dreamed of what I wanted to give. I dreamed of conversations that would save someone from quitting. I dreamed of words that would reach someone on the edge of their strength and pull them back. I dreamed of creating spaces where brokenness was not judged but honored. And those dreams gave my pain a job. I learned that limitations do not disqualify you from greatness. They refine you for it. They teach you efficiency, focus, humility. They remove distractions and leave you with what matters most. I would never romanticize suffering, but I will never deny what it taught me. It taught me that presence is more powerful than perfection, that truth is more magnetic than polish, that courage is quieter than ego. As I stand here in the fullness of who I am, not healed, not fixed, but whole. I know this. My life is not a tragedy. It is a testimony, not of physical recovery, but of spiritual resilience. not of everything going right, but of refusing to give up when everything went wrong. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: do not wait to feel worthy before you live boldly. Worthiness is not earned through ability, it is inherent. You were born deserving of dreams. I lost my body, but I found my truth. I lost my old life, but I gained meaning. I lost what was easy, but I kept what was essential. And as long as there is breath in me, as long as there is fire in my heart, I will continue to dream, not despite my body, but beyond it. Because dreams are not carried by legs, they are carried by courage, and mine is still standing.